Muy técnico, pero sí funciona.
A la clase obrera que nos tiene preparado el Instituto Nacional de Migración y la Guardia Nacional.
Bueno, al presidente mexicano que nos deje viajar en las rastras o en cualquier otro vehículo. Y al presidente de Estados Unidos que los deje entrar a su país porque vamos buscando un sueño.
Solo ya saben.
¡Libertad! 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 ¡Libertad!
Yo les diría que tomen conciencia más que todo con las familias, porque miren, si una persona viene con todos los hijos, una familia completa, usted sabe por qué vienen.
¡Dale placa!
Goodbye. Good morning, everybody.
You know, we're approaching the new year, right, Paulo? It's
Absolutely.
about a month, maybe a little bit more than that away. However, 2021 is still setting records for the number of migrants attempting to cross illegally at the southern border.
And while the White House is highlighting new numbers showing a decline in the last 3 months, our Joe St. George takes a look at how border towns are handling this unprecedented year, answering the question, where are all the migrants going?
That's not very good all around, because you never know who's bringing the disease.
Juan Cortez has lived along the southern border all his life. He calls McAllen, Texas home.
May? It was very bad.
He says this year, some months were worse than others when it comes to the number of people who illegally crossed the border near his city. In total, Border Patrol reports 1.6 million arrests nationwide of migrants from October of last year through September of this year. That is a record high. Now, one figure the government can't track is how many migrants successfully crossed the border and didn't get caught. And you can see here on the border here in McAllen, Texas, how they might do it. The brush on the other side is very thick. They could hide, and with the right tools, you could jump across, assuming Border Patrol isn't waiting for you on the other side.
I have no fears at all.
But one thing is obvious when talking with Juan. The increase isn't something that's drastically changed his life. That's because many migrants, when caught, only stay in the U.S. sometimes for a few minutes. Something known as Title 42 is kicking them out.
Thank God for that, because we would have been overwhelmed.
Roy Rodriguez is the city manager of McAllen. He says hundreds a day are sent back in the Rio Grande Valley under the public health order known as Title 42, enacted to stop the spread of COVID. Only those with legitimate safety or health concerns remain. In those cases, Catholic Charities steps in to provide care.
They're not staying in our community. We basically house them for several hours or a day, and then they're on their way. And they're going to your city.
Still, people who live on the border want more done. The White House points to migrant numbers being in decline over the last 3 months, but President Biden has yet to visit the border since taking office, and immigration reform has stalled in Congress. In McAllen, Texas, I'm Joe St. George.
Well, thank you very much, Joe St. George. Typically, he's in Washington, but he came down to South Texas to visit.
He did a couple weeks ago, and he got a lot of stories while he was down here. He was a busy, busy man.
Our top story at 6, the United States border policies are not working. That's according to human rights advocates and groups working with asylum seekers. The U.S. government says it expels the majority who cross the border, admitting about 30% try to cross again. Expelled asylum seekers often end up in the camps along the border.
When KENS 5 border reporter Anastasia Bolton first told you about one such encampment this spring, it was really small. In this Eyewitness News original, we're seeing how things are different now, just across the border from the city of Hidalgo in the Rio Grande Valley.
Just over the international bridge from Hidalgo, Texas, is Reynosa, Mexico, and a little city within it. An encampment built by people waiting to get into the United States.
Central Americans, Hondurans, Guatemalans, people from Afghanistan, China, Russia.
Felicia Rangel Sampanaro has seen the camp grow from a few people last spring to what it is now.
We now have over 2,000 people living on this small space.
She's one of the directors of the Sidewalk School for Asylum Seekers.
The Sidewalk School has turned and grown into something very different. We had to feed people. We had to find shelter, safety, take people to hospitals.
Rangel Sampanaro tells us when the Reynosa encampment first started forming last spring, her organization was the only American help on the ground.
Kidnapping of asylum seekers in Reynosa, that's a daily occurrence.
Still, there are now 4 sidewalk schools in Reynosa, teaching about 500 students.
At the very least we can give them are the basic necessities so they can navigate through their life.
Rangel Sampanaro says the majority living at the Reynosa camp have been expelled by the U.S. under Title 42.
Most of them have nothing to go back to.
Title 42 is a CDC rule that allows the government to remove people from the United States because of the pandemic.
I don't think Title 42 is working as a public health measure or as a deterrent.
Lindsay Gray is an immigration attorney who trains others to represent asylum seekers. She runs nonprofit Vecina.
There are 2 studies that have been done on whether immigration enforcement or the threat of enforcement is an effective deterrent. And the answer in both studies is no. When families and people are desperate, they will try to enter the United States in search of safety however they can. Another thing that we're seeing is this rise in recidivism, where people try to enter the United States without permission over and over again.
The administration has been repeatedly discouraging people from taking the dangerous journey. Gray's suggestion: allowing asylum seekers to have a credible fear interview, one of the first steps of the process that's largely missing now.
We do need effective immigration reform and at least restoration to the way things historically have been done.
With Jose Sanchez, I'm Anastasia Bolton.
Governor Greg Abbott has criticized the Biden administration, saying the federal government is not doing enough to stem the flow of migrants into the country. Meanwhile, the Biden administration is expected to restart a Trump-era effort that forces migrants to wait for their immigration hearings in Mexico.
What would you say to the judge if the judge was asking why you should not be held in contempt and incarcerated for defying a federal court order?
It is because we are implementing the court's order in good faith.
The tents are up in Brownsville, but so far, no asylum hearings have taken place despite a court order.
Those tents are expected to cost nearly $25 million in taxpayer dollars to operate, and that is per month. The price tag included in court filings, which also say the Remain in Mexico program should be back in effect by mid-November. That's right now, as today is the 16th.
Yeah, Channel 5 Santiago Caicedo went in search of answers today, and here's what he found out.
And Gilbert was a baker back in Venezuela. Armed government supporters threatened my wife and I for providing food and support during protests led by an opposition political party. He says life became unbearable for him. Now he and mostly single men find themselves at the Brownsville bus terminal after crossing the border illegally. Outside, a woman is let out of a Border Patrol van with a little girl. These people are the exception.
Because we're seeing still the confusion and we're still seeing people trying to cross the river.
DHS filed this update with a federal district court in Amarillo on Monday, essentially saying the Biden administration has been getting ready to re-implement the Trump-era migrant protection protocols. The government has been waiting on Mexico to agree that MPP be implemented and their needs are met in terms of migrant safety.
We must remember that Mexico is a sovereign nation and makes its own decisions, just as we do.
What is clear is the border is still restricted to people looking for asylum because of the pandemic under Title 42, but some pro bono attorneys are helping migrants enter the U.S. legally. And according to some legal experts, we could possibly see an agreement between the U.S. and Mexico on re-implementing MPP. We'll, of course, bring you the latest developments as they happen. At the Gateway International Bridge in downtown Brownsville, Santiago Caicedo, Channel 5 News.
Comments continue to pour in as we report on flights carrying migrants from the southern border landing here in Jacksonville. Yesterday, the News4JAX I-team showed you records our investigators obtained in which state police claim 78 flights carrying migrants landed at our airport in the past 6 months. This morning, Republican Senator Marco Rubio tweeted about our story, saying President Biden secretly sent at least 78 flights carrying illegal immigrants to Jacksonville in the last 6 months. These people are out of control. Governor DeSantis is trying to put a stop to such flights, but News4JAX I-team investigator Vic Michelucci tells us Democratic Congressman Al Lawson contends it's a legitimate federal policy on immigration.
It is polarizing. Many opinions split along party lines. So we took the case to an immigration attorney to see if it's legal.
It's reckless and it's wrong.
Governor Ron DeSantis has made his stance clear. He says the flights carrying migrants into and through Jacksonville International Airport are dangerous and he contends illegal. But Democratic Congressman Al Lawson is firing back, saying the charters are for unaccompanied minors, and they've been running since the George W. Bush administration. In an email to News4Jax, he wrote, "These flights allow our country to do what is morally right. We are building an immigration system based on humanity and working to keep families together, process asylum claims quickly, and help unaccompanied minors get placed with loving, caring, and safe relatives as fast as possible." With such a divide in opinions, we looked at the legal grounds with immigration attorney Ashwin Sharma.
The facilities in Texas and these other border states are substantially overwhelmed. And so I assume that that's why they're having to go to non-border states like Florida.
Sharma says Florida, like other states, must follow immigration law, which is federal. He adds President Biden's border policy is to relocate unaccompanied minors to a safe shelter while their cases are going through the legal system. Leaders and interpretations have changed from President Trump to President Biden, but he says immigration law, for the most part, has stayed the same.
I'm not sure if there's all expenses paid, bus that brings people to the U.S., but the simple fact is that they are here. They are at the border. They're coming past the border, and at this point, our policy, our immigration policy, to an extent, has to adjudicate the merit of each individual's claims.
Do some of these migrants have the opportunity to be legal American citizens?
I would say so. I mean, every case is unique, but I would say if their claims are legitimate and they qualify under our laws.
We are still waiting for better data from both the state and federal government about who is coming through, the number of migrants, their ages, which countries they're from, and where the government is housing them. Once we find out, we will let you know. I'm Vic Michelucci, Channel 4, the local station.
And also new this morning, a Clarksville restaurant owner sentenced to 20 months in federal prison. Kwanwei Shi is the majority owner of the new China Buffet and Grill. Federal prosecutors say Shi harbored illegal aliens from Guatemala and China, evading taxes in the process. The indictment alleges that the illegal workers lived with Shi at his home and were taken back and forth to the restaurant through work.
President Biden's going to take a break from his infrastructure victory tour tomorrow to deal with something that's been crippling his poll numbers, the southern border. Take a look at the polling right now. Just under 42% of Americans approve of what the president is doing with his job. 52% plus disapprove. His numbers on how he's handling the border are far worse than that. The president will meet with the Mexican and Canadian presidents to discuss a slew of issues, including the recent surge of migrants. But unfortunately, the president has little to no leverage at the moment with the Mexican president. Here's Mr. Biden, Secretary of Homeland Security, yesterday explaining that Mexico just isn't playing ball.
It is because we are implementing the court's order in good faith. We are working with Mexico. It requires a bilateral relationship and an agreement.
All right. There's already thousands of migrants headed to the border through Mexico right now. Another caravan scheduled to start tomorrow. And that's not all. Axios reports Mr. Biden's new border problem. Nations won't take back migrants. An unprecedented number of migrant adults are coming from countries that make deportation difficult, primarily Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua, and Brazil. Simply put, countries are not taking back migrants, and they're coming from countries that don't make deportation easy. A man charged with protecting the border, Brandon Judd, president of the National Border Patrol Council, joins us now. Always appreciate you being with us. If you listen to Secretary Mayorkas, hey, it's not the Biden administration's fault. Just blame this all on Mexico. Does he have a point?
No, he doesn't. In fact, if they would have never gotten rid of the MPP in the first place, we wouldn't be in this current situation. There's an awful lot.
I'm sorry, I hate to interrupt you. I don't know what NPP means.
The migrant protection protocols will remain in Mexico. If they wouldn't have gotten rid of that program in the first place, that they're supposed to re-implement, that Mexico has given this administration a hard time doing, if they wouldn't have gotten rid of it in the first place, we wouldn't be here right now. There's an awful lot that Mexico can do to help this issue, and they did it under the Trump administration, but they have to have reason to do it. These cartels are generating billions of dollars for the Mexican economy, and if President Biden doesn't step up, and if he doesn't do the same thing that President Trump did, such as threaten tariffs against them, then there's no reason for Mexico to help us, even though there is a great deal that they could do. There just has to be an incentive for them to actually step to the plate.
Yeah, you look at the numbers, migrants by year, 2019 under the Trump administration, 921,000. 2020 during COVID dropped to 547,000. That was the combination of get tough from the Trump administration and COVID. And then it spiked now almost to 1.7 million. That is so far in 2021. That number will go up. Is the Biden administration using Mexico as a foil almost to saying, hey, look, it's not our problem, and therefore they don't have to make any of the hard decisions or take any of the tough political choices?
Well, that's the spin that this administration tries to do all the time. When they're caught as being wrong, then they'll try to deflect and try to blame other people. They continue to try to say that this is Trump's fault. They continue to try to say that he got rid of all of the infrastructure, when in reality he built up the infrastructure. And so this is the deflection game that we've been expecting from this administration. But again, all we have to do is look at history. What has Mexico done in the past? And any time that this country has been tough on Mexico, any time that we have tried to force Mexico with such things as tariffs or withholding money or economic issues, we've seen Mexico step to the plate. And again, there is a lot that they can do. These people that are coming through Mexico to be smuggled into the United States, they are violating Mexican law. They're not just violating the laws of the United States, they're also violating laws in Mexico. So there is an awful lot that they can do. The question is, will they do it?
Yeah, you don't sound optimistic in that statement, but we appreciate you leaving it as an open question. We'll see tomorrow how the conversations go. This headline caught our eye, and it's important to realize. Texas Democrat, this is Henry Cuellar, conservative Democrat. We've had him on the show. Fine gentleman, certainly a Democrat in every sense of the word, but a practical one from Texas. Calls for a new border czar. I've moved on from the vice president. Does who the border czar is really matter, or is it more what the policies that the border czar are implementing?
Well, it matters in what the border czar is telling the administration. If the border czar goes to the administration and says, this is what you must do, and then the administration doesn't do it, then it's going to fall on the head of the administration. But if you have a border czar that is weak, if you have a border czar that is looking to pander to open border special interest groups, then the administration isn't going to be getting the information that is necessary. You always have to have, in an administration, you have to have people that are going to be willing to push back on what your general tendencies are. If not, you're never going to get the proper information, and you're not going to be able to make the informed decisions because of that information. So yes, it is important who the border czar is, because that person has to give good information to the administration.
Some stunning headlines this week. Fox News riding along with the Texas Department of Public Safety on one of its heavily armed gunboats as local law enforcement fight to combat the growing problem of human and drug smuggling. Bill Malusian back at his post today. Bill, good morning.
Bill, good morning to you. That's exactly right. We are currently embedded with Texas DPS on one of their gunboats here on the Rio Grande in Mission, Texas. This is one of the hot spots here in the Rio Grande Valley. What these guys are looking for is any kind of illegal activity they can find, whether it be humans coming across the river, drugs coming across the river. This is one of the biggest hot spots they can find. Obviously, a lot of the activity happening in between the ports of entry. Everything has to come across this river. A lot of it happening on rafts. You can see from our drone. You can see from all the multiple cameras we have. These guys are heavily armed, and they're looking for whatever they can find out here when it comes to drug trafficking, human trafficking. Now, one of the biggest things they're looking for, obviously, is fentanyl and drugs. Take a look at this graphic right here. Just in 2021, November 11th last week, the state of Texas has seized 413 pounds of fentanyl. Just to put that in perspective for you, that's enough lethal doses to kill 93.7 million people. Just 1 kilo of fentanyl is enough to kill 500,000 people. So the fentanyl continues to pour in, and Texas DPS is on the hunt trying to find as much of it as they can. Now, they're also busy looking for those human smugglers. Take a look at this video out of Far, Texas, here in the Rio Grande Valley. Just a couple days ago, Texas DPS was pursuing this vehicle, a suspected human smuggler who had just been seen leaving a suspected stash house. They pull the guy over, and take a look at these photos right here. That human smuggler was disguised as a construction worker. He had a little construction vest on, he had a hard hat on, and inside of the vehicle he had 5 illegal immigrants who he was smuggling at the time. That smuggler being charged with evading as well as 5 counts of human smuggling. They're not just busy down here in the Rio Grande Valley, though. Take a look at this video out of the Del Rio area. This is Kinney County, northwest of where we are. This is where Texas DPS, a special ops team, work the private ranches out there. Runners are constantly coming across the border and moving through those private ranches in the middle of the night. Texas DPS pretty much the only ones out there patrolling it. This was a couple nights ago. They apprehended more than 20 runners moving through that area. These are the ones who do not want to be caught. They typically wear black or camo in an effort to not get away, many of them with criminal records. Now, back out here live, we talk about criminals trying to come across the border. It's a good thing these guys are out here patrolling, because Border Patrol, again, completely overwhelmed in the area. Texas DPS, through Operation Lone Star, helping supplement their federal partners here by patrolling this river. Just last week, there were 4 MS-13 gang members caught in this area in just a 14-hour span. We'll send it back to you.
On it goes. Thank you, Bill Malusian. Back on the...
The Biden administration's open border policy continues to lure more illegal aliens to the United States. The Department of Homeland Security expects the number of undocumented migrants seeking to enter the U.S. southern border to surpass 2 million by the end of 2021. According to Breitbart, DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas gave the number at the hearing before the Senate Judiciary Committee on Tuesday, November 16th. Asked by Senator Ted Cruz if Mayorkas expected the total to reach more than 2 million crossings from January to December, he confirmed, "I believe that is correct." Mayorkas did not provide the number of illegal aliens successfully entering the United States through the border, saying he, as the DHS secretary, did not have the information on hand. But in October, Senator Ron Johnson claimed in a letter sent to Mayorkas that the DHS had let at least 500,000 border crossers and illegal aliens be released into the U.S. since January, when Biden took office. Data from the U.S. Customs and Border Protection released on Tuesday showed that 158,575 illegal migrants were apprehended at the border in October, surging 128% from last October, when only 69,032 illegal aliens were caught. The apprehended migrants include 104,441 single adults, a 75% increase from last October, 41,487 family units, a 795% increase, and 12,647 unaccompanied minors, a 170% increase. Most of the migrants are from Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. In July, Stephen Koppitz with Princeton Policy Advisors forecast that the Biden administration's deliberate policy of holding the border open will invite nearly 1.7 million illegal aliens arriving at the U.S. border in the 2021 calendar year, making it the worst year for illegal immigration in American history. According to the Washington Times, the Western States Sheriff's Association this week issued a declaration of no confidence in Mayorkas, urging President Biden to oust him and find a new department chief to help restore respect for the border and immigration law. America's sheriffs have watched in disbelief as the southern border has turned into an invisible line in the sand, wrote the association, which represents 17 states. They pointed to a surge of illegal immigrants and drugs pouring across the border in recent months and tied some recent violent crimes in major cities to them.
The state taking extreme measures now to curb crossings, even using shipping containers in some areas. Arrests at the U.S.-Mexico border are now dropping after reaching a 21-year high over the summer.
KPRC2 Investigates has been tracking the situation all year, reporting on mass encampments and the strain on Texas border communities. In fact, this map here shows the locations visited by our investigator, Robert Arnold, and he just returned from another trip to the Rio Grande Valley. Robert, what did you see this time?
Well,
Well, the number of people caught illegally crossing the southern border has dropped for the third straight month, but those decreases are still not enough to ease the workload of Border Patrol agents who continue to encounter thousands of immigrants each day.
Romeo 273.
Border Patrol agent Jesse Moreno
There's something down there.
searches for a group of migrants suspected of hiding in the underbrush near a section of the wall close to the city of Hidalgo.
That may have just been the guide, and he's tucked in very well.
This group proves elusive, but nearby, agents catch up with a group of 4 men hiding in a field.
They were all single adults. 2 of the individuals were here illegally from Colombia, and the other 2 were from Guatemala.
As the sun rises, agents continue searching unforgiving pieces of terrain while drones and helicopters scan from above. Last month, agents encountered 164,000 people along our southern border. That's down from the month before, but still represents a 128% increase from this time last year.
We're still seeing great numbers of apprehensions daily here. So whether it's an average of 1,000 apprehensions that we're seeing daily versus 1,500 or 200 or 2,000.
Texas's Rio Grande Valley remains the busiest spot along the entire border. Nearly 26,000 family units and unaccompanied minors were caught here in October.
Yo pienso que no es una oportunidad.
I think with an opportunity, I can have a better life for my family. Back home, there's no opportunity. Marvin Alvarenga and his wife and 2 children spent a month making their way from El Salvador to the U.S. He says they hope to make it to family in Boston and will apply for asylum.
La violencia.
The violence in my country, and there are no jobs. We heard the same hopes from Amilcar Gutierrez and his family. Moreno says smuggling operations continue to drive these numbers.
Continuing to tell the migrants that the border is open, and in fact it is not.
Another side of this issue is the backlog in immigration court, which is now nearing 1.5 million cases. It now takes anywhere from 2 to 3 years for a single case to reach resolution. Reporting live, Robert Arnold, KPRC2 News.
When it comes to the US-Mexico relationship, a single issue has dominated in recent years: immigration. For President Trump, it was almost the only lens through which the White House considered its relationship with its neighbour to the south. Well, now, under President Biden, migration remains the priority as record numbers make the journey north. On Thursday, Joe Biden will be hosting the leaders of Canada and Mexico at the White House for the North American Leaders Summit, in the first gathering of the so-called Three Amigos since 2016. Laura Trevelyan is in Mexico City.
Dawn is breaking over the Zocalo here in Mexico City, which was once the ceremonial heart of the Aztec capital. Behind me is the historic National Cathedral. And as you were saying there, immigration is really the #1 issue in the US-Mexico relationship. But what's been happening under President Biden's watch is that so many immigrants who think that it will be easier to enter the United States because he's not separating families at the border as President Trump did. He's not trying to build a wall. So there's been this record surge of migrants, by the way, from across Central and Southern America, trying to cross Mexico's southern border to get to the United States. And now what's happening is migrants are attempting the trip as a single group. And our correspondent, Will Grant, met them as they traveled.
It has become the defining image of modern Latin America, migrants on the move. Setting off before dawn, some 4,000 migrants from Central America and the Caribbean spent weeks making slow progress across southern Mexico. Clutching their children as they walked, led by little but their faith, they'd come from all corners of the continent. Liux Vivarona left his native Cuba 7 years ago. He moved to Ecuador, where his daughter was born, but the family income has halved during the coronavirus pandemic. Reaching the United States, he says, is their only hope.
For Cubans, the doors to the US have always been open. That's no secret. With or without immigration policies that favor us, Cubans have always got in. It's been harder with the Remain in Mexico policy, but I think that's finished for good now.
In a gathering of migrants this size, one hears the full cross-section of problems in Latin America, from economic ruin and political instability to climate change and COVID, from Cuba to Colombia, Haiti and Honduras. But although the push factors at home are more acute than ever, many are finding it hard to settle in Mexico too.
In fact, a record number of people have applied for asylum in Mexico this year. Between January and October, there were 108,000 asylum requests. That's 80% higher than during the previous president's entire 6 years in office. Mexico's asylum agency, COMAR, is chronically underfunded and admits it struggled to cope even before this latest spike.
Every single nationality has increased. In addition to that, we have all these Haitians. And of course, since the numbers are growing that much, we are not our capacity is limited. And that's why.
Can you cope?
Well, actually, with all these people coming now, we're kind of being overwhelmed. That's very clear.
And do you have the budget to cope?
No, that is the point. We don't have the budget, and we're struggling for that budget.
Critics say the lack of funding shows the Mexican government isn't serious about helping migrants, a point I put to the president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, at one of his daily news conferences.
No hay un país.
There is no other country that designates as many resources in proportion to its economic capacity as Mexico to help its people, especially the poorest. And Mexico remains in solidarity with the migrants too.
Mexico and Washington speak of creating a $4 billion development fund for Central America to dissuade people from heading north.
We can't just flip a switch and make it better. The reality is that we inherited a system, an immigration system that was deeply broken.
Vice President Kamala Harris is the border czar, but she says the migrant crisis isn't her fault.
All-time high border crossings, a new caravan headed north as we speak, all happening under her watch. Fox News contributor Lara Trump joins us now. Lara, great to see you as always. Look, how much longer can they blame your father-in-law when polling shows the American people know what's going on? They see right through this.
Yeah, they absolutely do. And it's almost laughable, this response from Vice President Kamala Harris, that somehow Donald Trump is to blame. Go back to January of this year. You did not see the number of people illegally crossing our southern border like you do now. Actually, under Donald Trump, we had a secure border. Had the Biden-Harris administration left everything alone that Donald Trump had put in place, we would be in a much different position right now. But everyone knows that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris ran on an open borders policy. Remember every single one of the Democrats on stage during the primaries raising their hands for free health care for illegal immigrants? They all but invited people from all around the world that wanted to come here illegally to come now under this administration. We're now paying reparations of up to $450,000 per person to illegal immigrants. It is absolutely preposterous that this has anything to do with Donald Trump. If they wanted to fix it, and Kamala Harris, I'll give you some advice. The switch you need to flip is to go back to the Trump era policies, because those were actually working. So no one buys this. I don't know who gave her the advice to use this as her, tactic to get out of this question, but probably the wrong person to blame when Donald Trump had one of the most secure borders and we now have one of the most porous.
Yeah, and you look at the polling, Laura, and in one of the areas where President Biden polls the lowest is on the immigration issue. So it's a wonder why he hasn't changed his stance, because it's hurting him politically.
And now to the uptick in human smuggling. In just 1 week, troopers discovered 15 people in the Bay Area who were here illegally.
And tonight, the agency on the front lines in this fight is speaking to Aid on Your Side. Investigator Mazda Saidi here with a look at this trend.
So, Stacey and Keith, troopers are not looking for human smuggling. They're just looking for traffic violations. But just last week, troopers found 6 men and a packed vehicle. And it's not the only time. On Interstate 75 in Hernando County Thursday, troopers made the latest human smuggling arrest. This driver is accused of transporting 5 undocumented workers to Tampa. According to the arrest report, the driver told troopers, quote, he has a boss in Arizona who makes arrangements for the trip. In just 1 week, same interstate, troopers took in 3 other suspects. This man, reportedly driving without a license, is charged with transporting 4 migrants. Troopers also sharing pictures of the vehicles involved in 2 other incidents that happened just 6 minutes apart.
Is it something that we're seeing more of? Yes, we are.
Did you expect to be on the front lines of human smuggling?
This is one issue of many that we deal with.
Sergeant Steve Gaskins of the Florida Highway Patrol. In these cases, he says, troopers initially spot a traffic infraction, one vehicle closely following another, illegal window tinting, and fake tags. Once the stop is made, troopers find food wrappers, air fresheners, even a bottle of urine. The people inside, all strangers to one another and in the country illegally.
All these things, they build up and give a picture to our troopers that something's amiss. When we're seeing them, they're typically on the tail end of their journey.
So they're looking to stay in Florida?
Most of the people are looking to find work, reside here. For whatever reason, they want to be here.
So where do they actually end up? The drivers go to the county jail, we are told, charged with human smuggling. The passengers are taken by U.S. Border Patrol, and they are eventually transported back to their home country.
You know, we hear a lot about this, but we don't hear a lot about where they're coming from. What countries are we talking about here?
So with these 4 incidents, we've learned that the people involved are from Mexico, Guatemala, and also Honduras.
Okay, thanks, Masa.
First at 5, state officials are preparing for another potential migrant surge along the southwest border.
It comes 2 months after nearly 15,000 migrants gathered under the bridge in Del Rio. Right now, in Eagle Pass, Governor Abbott has deployed the Texas National Guard and DPS state troopers for Operation Steel Curtain. This is drone video given to us by DPS of the area.
Their mission along the border is to prevent another mass group of migrants from crossing into Texas. Vanessa Croy with the KENS 5 border team is in Eagle Pass with more on these efforts.
It's called Operation Steel Curtain. Hundreds of Texas National Guard soldiers and DPS troopers creating a barrier here along the border in Eagle Pass. Officials say it's a show of force. These troops ready to respond and stop any mass crossings. As law enforcement sources tell us, more caravans of migrants could be headed this way. In a park where kids are usually playing ball. Now, choppers touch and go, dropping off soldiers in what looks like a military training ground.
Our #1 goal is to deter.
It's here in Eagle Pass where Governor Greg Abbott has launched Operation Steel Curtain.
We are capable to expand or surge to wherever on the border that we're needed.
State troopers, along with Texas National Guard soldiers, form a barricade along the river.
So what we want to do is create the flexibility to surge to wherever the need is greatest. If it is in response to illegal activity, we want to be able to repel that and disrupt that type of activity.
Border Patrol said agents in Eagle Pass are encountering an average of 500 migrants a day, surpassing Del Rio as the new hotspot for migrant crossings. So today, these troops here are preparing.
They did some crowd control formations, some riot control.
To prevent another chaotic incident like what happened in Del Rio.
And one of the things of being proactive is the presence. The high presence of law enforcement here is a great deterrent.
Eagle Pass Mayor Rolando Salinas said this show of force in a public park is only meant to protect his city and those who visit here.
We have an international bridge here. We have thousands of people crossing every day through that bridge. And I want to make sure that those people, the people that live in Eagle Pass, are safe.
Officials tell us if another surge should happen anywhere along the Texas-Mexico border, the Texas National Guard will be ready to respond and in place within 3 hours. Reporting in Eagle Pass with the KENS 5 border team, I'm Vanessa Croy.
All right, Stephanie, we're seeing a lot of differences, though, along the southern border. It's not all quite the same, is it?
No, definitely not. So our colleague Alicia Barrera is live for us in Eagle Pass, where she's talking about Governor Greg Abbott there, who set up shipping containers to plug holes along the border to prevent undocumented immigrants from coming in. So the concern there is really more about border security, whereas here it's commerce. Up in Eagle Pass, it is border security. And we're going to send things on over to our colleague Alicia Barrera, who is live in Eagle Pass with that part of the story. Alicia.
Stefania, well, really, these shipping containers have been the talk of the town, people swinging by really just to snap a picture, and they haven't even been here that long. And although those who live in Eagle Pass say, yeah, it's a bit of an eyesore, this is really a park where kids come to play, they are on board with what the state of Texas is doing, really under the leadership of Governor Greg Abbott. So you get a better idea. There are about 20 shipping containers that stretch along the Texas side of the Rio Grande, and they pass directly under the Eagle Pass Piedras Negras International Bridge. So you get a better idea of how much it covers. The row of containers is actually longer than a football field. And a big question from people in Eagle Pass is who put these here and why? Well, again, it's under the leadership of the governor of Texas that DPS and the Texas Military Department have partnered for Operation Steel Curtain. The shipping containers or steel containers were placed here yesterday, and today we've only seen soldiers from the Texas National Guard patrol this area. But another tactic, part of the operation, is barbed wire, and all of this to, quote, block and repel criminal activity and stop violations of state law. That's according to DPS. And those who live here in Eagle Pass, they say this is okay. They are on board. There's been a steady flow of curious people who at first say it's tough to believe there's even heavy military presence here or that boxes could stop undocumented immigrants. However, once they see it for themselves, they say they're pleased.
We have soldiers even stationed here, so we're well protected. But if they come by force and everything, yes, they can cross over. So now we wait and see what's going to go on because we have the defense, we have the soldiers protecting us here, so we're okay.
Well, they didn't have to wait too long to see some activity happen here at the border. Border Patrol was able to catch and detain a family of 5 undocumented immigrants just a few hours ago. And I asked one of the agents exactly where they caught up with this group, and it was just west of where we're standing in the middle of the Rio Grande. That family's clothing was wet. They were shivering. They were soaked, and they seemed a little confused. And again, this all happening right behind where we were standing, all unfolding. And again, although the plan is to deter families of undocumented immigrants, that family of 5 was able to get through. So at this point, it's truly too early to know exactly if Operation Steel Front will work. But again, troops are standing by. Stefania?
Well, I'll take it from here. Thank you guys so much. Great work on the border. Alicia Barrera and Stefania Jimenez.
The Texas border town's embracing a new idea from state officials, using empty shipping containers as barriers in order to deter migrants along the U.S.-Mexico border from crossing illegally. Our Ken Molestina spoke to the mayor of Eagle Pass about why they feel the need to do that now.
Eagle Pass in Maverick County sits along an estimated 26 miles of border with Mexico. These days, the area around their port of entry with Piedras Negras to the south looks like this. Empty shipping containers and barbed wire being used to create barriers right up against the river.
Those containers are basically substituting vehicles. So instead of having manned vehicles, we have these containers.
Eagle Pass Mayor Rolando Salinas tells me the plan to do this came from Texas state officials and the Department of Public Safety, but he's on board with it. He says seeing what happened in the neighboring city of Del Rio just a couple of months ago when 15,000 migrants crossed illegally under their port of entry, overwhelming law enforcement has them scrambling now for solutions, just in case a similar situation happens in Eagle Pass.
We always have to be prepared for a situation like that. That way you don't get caught off guard and then you don't know what to do.
Mayor Salinas is an independent and says the political mess that has been made of securing the border has forced them to take this kind of temporary action.
I would like a little more attention from, I'll be honest, from our federal government.
He claims the current administration in Washington isn't doing enough at the federal level to help them on the border.
Why do you suppose that the federal government has had sort of a lackluster response to your needs down there and they've been dragging their feet? Why do you think that's happening?
I don't know. That's not for something that I can answer. That's a question that I have also.
I'm Ken Molestina, CBS 11 News.
Mayor Salinas, by the way, says the containers are not meant to be there long term, but Ken asked him, and he did say it's kind of hard right now to say how long they will stay in place.
So, Stacey and Keith, I spoke with an immigration attorney who was in touch with these migrants, and he tells me that as long as they can find jobs here in Florida, many will keep coming. Dash cam video rolling as troopers pull over a vehicle for illegal window tinting on Tuesday. One by one, the 7 men inside are separated.
No English, any of them. No ID, any of them.
According to the arrest report, the men entered the U.S. illegally in Arizona and paid to be transported to Florida.
Man, you let a guy drive your car and you don't know his name?
This is the 5th human smuggling case on Interstate 75 in a span of 2 weeks. 6 men are returned to U.S. Border Patrol, 1 arrested.
This is called a coyote process. The people who bring them are called coyotes. They do it for pay.
Longtime immigration attorney Bob Sikta says right now the border is flooded with migrants, primarily from Central America as well as Venezuela and Cuba. And many headed to Florida are looking for work in agriculture.
We grow half the United States' use of tomatoes here in Florida. Some growers are being fooled by them because they are given fake IDs, things like that, by the coyotes. Some of the growers are in league with them.
So how reliant is this industry on undocumented workers? Data from New American Economy, a bipartisan research and advocacy organization, shows in 2019, Florida had more than 43,000 agriculture workers, and 42% were undocumented. That's more than 2 out of 5 workers.
When they work out in the fields, this is work nobody wants. They are doing essential things, and they're doing them at a lower cost.
So very tough work. Now, agriculture, of course, is huge here in our state, and experts say that without these migrant workers, we could see the price for tomatoes, strawberries, and citrus going up at the grocery store.
So, Masa, is the work the only thing that's really drawing them to the Bay Area?
So it is a major draw, but the immigration attorney that I spoke with says many are also fleeing violence and poverty in their home countries as well.
This is new video just into News Nation from overnight at the U.S.-Mexico border. This is on a ranch just off the Rio Grande. But for the dragnets by the Texas Highway Patrol and Texas Rangers, all the illegal immigrants you're seeing in this video would be well on their way into the United States, including one with a conviction of aggravated robbery who was deported and then came back. Tonight, our friends at The Hill report that the situation on the border is a lot worse than you think. Border Patrol caught 4 known MS-13 gang members in a 13-hour span. 2 of them had been deported before. Lieutenant Chris Oliveras, the Texas Department of Public Safety, is quite literally on the front lines and joins us now from West Texas as the sun gets ready to set and the coyotes and smugglers come out. Lieutenant, good to see you. Help us understand the difference between what Border Patrol is doing, processing all of these migrants who come across on federal land, and what you guys are doing on the ranches.
Right. So great to be with you again, Lillian. Thanks again for having me on. So what we're doing that's so different compared to prior operations along the border is that Texas DPS or Texas DPS troopers are now on these ranch properties, on the ground, walking these properties, looking for these large groups of illegal immigrants that are coming across, as well as working the train yards. That's never been done before by our men and women, and it's being done right now because U.S. Border Patrol is stretched thin. They're overwhelmed with manpower. They're stuck processing. They're not in the field doing what they're good at, and that's detecting these large groups that are coming across and detecting drugs. So we're having to fill that void, those gaps, by patrolling those areas. And this is what we're coming across on those videos. And some of these members that are coming across with these groups, criminal gang members, as you showed there, we came across a group a couple of days ago, large group of 25 illegal immigrants that came across a ranch. That particular individual had served time in a Texas prison, 7-year term in a Texas prison for aggravated robbery, and was wanted for ICE for a deportation felony. So again, these are not your asylum seekers. That's one thing the viewers need to understand, that these are not the asylum seekers that are coming across. These are single adults that are avoiding detection, trying to move further inland. And again, these are the individuals that are coming across our borders.
Yeah, so as we look at these groups, and I know you encounter them day in, day out, and you can charge them with state crimes, which puts a whole different bend on it than the federal people who are federal crimes or federal immigration laws that are just processed through. So the state crimes can carry a little bit more teeth. Is this a case of a bunch of people who just want a better life in America and 1 or 2 bad apples who sneak in with them, or these groups of people who, but for escaping your guys, would end up committing crimes throughout America?
You know, and that's what we're seeing, and that's a good question right there. The group that we came across last night, I was out last night with our Texas DPS troopers on a ranch, and we apprehended 21 illegal immigrants. Majority of those fled from us on foot. They ran from us, so we had to chase them down, and with the support of our DPS aircraft, we're able to locate them. So again, some of these individuals are resisting our law enforcement, they're resisting apprehension, and they're avoiding detection. So again, these are individuals that are coming across our borders, and that particular group, I mean, we asked them, you know, where were they going? What's the reason coming across the border? A lot of them just say they want to come and work. They don't have a significant reason to actually be across or come across the border. And that's what we're seeing. In that particular group, we have people from Nicaragua, Guatemala, Honduras, and Mexico that came across that particular group. So again, different countries that are coming across and trying to move further inland with really no significant reason as far as to coming across here.
Yeah, so you have the people who are coming to work, and then, as you point out, inside those groups, you've got gang members and sex traffickers and everybody else. Encounters with migrants from different countries rose dramatically. Ecuador way up, Brazil way up, Nicaragua way up, by multiple orders of magnitude, these additional numbers. There's kind of these two messages, right, that we are, I don't know what this is. Do you think the Biden administration, by executive order, okay, Ecuador, 95,000 encounters. You can see just the huge spikes over time. You got these two contradictory messages, right? President Biden's campaign promises that are being used by the cartels to get people to buy into their smuggling programs. And then you've got your message from the Texas Department of Public Safety and Governor Abbott, who says if you come here, you're going to be arrested on state charges. Net, what are the cartels here, and what are the people wanting to come here for work here?
So that's, first of all, that's the reason right there. That's the issue right there, is the messaging. The messaging from day one from the federal government was to come to the U.S., that you will be released into the country. And they've seen that firsthand with families and friends that have come across that make that journey and get released into the country. So that messaging is also being exploited by the cartels and the smuggling organizations because they're profiting off of this current crisis for now. So they want these individuals to come across our borders because, again, that's money for them. And again, what we talked about earlier is these individuals that are coming across, it all has to do with the messaging right now. And of course, our message is that you come across Texas, you will be arrested. But again, now trying to incentivize some of these illegal immigrants by paying them, up to $450,000 a head, that's not going to help the cause right now. And again, organizations are going to continue to profit off of that and use that messaging to their advantage.
Yeah, well, they certainly have been, and we'll let you guys get to work tonight. Thanks for being with us, sir. Good to see you.
We have already seen record numbers of migrants attempting to illegally cross the southern border. Now, this comes as the White House claims that new numbers indicate a decline during the last 3 months.
Joe St. George takes a look at how border towns are handling this unprecedented year.
That's not very good all around because you never know who's bringing the disease.
Juan Cortez has lived along the southern border all his life. He calls McAllen, Texas, home.
May? It was very bad.
He says this year some months were worse than others when it comes to the number of people who illegally crossed the border near his city. In total, Border Patrol reports 1.6 million arrests nationwide of migrants from October of last year through September of this year. That is a record high. Now, one figure the government can't track is how many migrants successfully crossed the border and didn't get caught. And you can see here on the border here in McAllen, Texas, how they might do it. The brush on the other side is very thick. They could hide, and with the right tools, you could jump across, assuming Border Patrol isn't waiting for you on the other side.
I have no fears at all.
But one thing is obvious when talking with Juan. The increase isn't something that's drastically changed his life. That's because many migrants, when caught, only stay in the U.S. sometimes for a few minutes. Something known as Title 42 is kicking them out.
Thank God for that, because we would have been overwhelmed.
Roy Rodriguez is the city manager of McAllen. He says hundreds a day are sent back in the Rio Grande Valley under the public health order known as Title 42, enacted to stop the spread of COVID. Only those with legitimate safety or health concerns remain. In those cases, Catholic Charities steps in to provide care.
They're not staying in our community. We basically house them for several hours or a day, and then they're on their way, and they're going to your city.
Still, people who live on the border want more done. The White House points to migrant numbers being in decline over the last 3 months, but President Biden has yet to visit the border since taking office, and immigration reform has stalled in Congress. In McAllen, Texas, I'm Joe St. George.
At the first North American Leaders Summit since 2016, one point of contention for Mexico will be migration.
The US has detained or deported more than 1.7 million migrants over the past year, an all-time high. And with multiple migrant caravans moving northward through Mexico, facing off with the military as they move, President Andrés Manuel López Obrador is anxious to bring his deployed troops home.
Against the government. And
Arturo Erdely is one of Mexico's top political analysts.
Well, I would say that it's kind of an uncomfortable role for the Mexican government, but the Mexican government is paying the price, the political price of trying to help to stop migration from Central America. So it has been used by opposition leaders as a weapon, politically speaking.
And while Mexico may want de-escalation, the US may be asking more of its southern neighbor. President Biden has twice tried to end the controversial Remain in Mexico policy of his predecessor Donald Trump, which forced migrants to remain south of the border while their asylum claims were processed. But US courts have ordered its re-implementation, and the current administration has indicated it will comply for now. But Mexico has made it clear what it wants out of the bargain, promised US stimulus dollars in aid sent to the so-called Northern Triangle countries, El Salvador, Honduras and Guatemala, in order to tackle causes of migration at their source. Jorge Matus is a political analyst and social commentator who has closely followed the phenomenon.
We got to acknowledge that people don't want to migrate. They want to stay home, where their cultures are, where their families are. They just go north because of the violence, because of they're unable to provide a dignified life for their families.
At the first in-person meeting between the three presidents, López Obrador is pushing to see millions of their shared continent's most marginalized people benefit.
Lawsuit against Sacramento County Sheriff Scott Jones in the county of Sacramento was filed this Monday. KCRA 3's Maricela de la Cruz reached out to both parties to find out more about these allegations in the lawsuit. Maricela.
Golston, it's a 21-page document that alleges that there has been collaboration between ICE and Sacramento County Sheriff Scott Jones, ignoring the California Values Act, which protects undocumented immigrants from being turned over to federal immigration authorities. The complaint, which the American Civil Liberties Union says has already been filed, alleges that the Sacramento County Sheriff's Office has been working with ICE in the enforcement of federal immigration laws, regardless of the California Values Act, or SB 54.
We have documentation from the Sheriff's Department itself showing exactly how these illegal transfers between the Sheriff's Office and ICE have occurred.
SB 54 prevents California state and local agencies from collaborating with immigration authorities.
If somebody is detained in a state or local jail, it would prevent the local officials from holding the person based upon what's called an ICE detainer, unless there were very specific circumstances that would allow them to do so, usually related to the person having been convicted of certain serious offenses in the past that are enumerated in the law.
In the complaint, the ACLU alleges that Sacramento County Sheriff Scott Jones has collaborated with ICE in arresting Sacramento area residents, where staff at the Rio Casabnas Correctional Center notify ICE of the date and time of a person's release, even when that person does not have a criminal history that authorizes such notification under SB 54.
The plaintiffs in this lawsuit have stepped forward to try to make sure that Sheriff Jones and his department are complying with state law that's designed to protect families and communities against unlawful immigration enforcement.
The complaint also alleges that the Sheriff's Office is also violating several provisions of the Truth Act, which is a due process of protections for people of interest to ICE. Immigration attorney Brian López looked over the complaint.
What's being alleged is that there seems to be some awareness on behalf of the Sacramento County Sheriffs that what they may be doing is questionable at the very least. if not flat out prohibited.
NorCal Resist is part of the lawsuit. They say that separation of families is happening away from border towns.
Because separation of families are happening closer than you think. They're happening here on a local basis and anywhere else where there's an abuse of power.
We reached out to Sacramento County officials and the Sacramento County Sheriff's Office. They both said they don't comment on pending litigation. Now, this lawsuit was filed yesterday. The ACLU also tells me that they're waiting to gather more information from the county. After that, they hope to be able to set a hearing date sometime next year. Live in Sacramento, Marisela de la Cruz, KCRA 3 News.
All right, Marisela, thank you.
When you run DHS like it's an abolish ICE fan club, you shouldn't be surprised when you have an immigration crisis on your hands.
The people determining our border policy, in your opinion, are they just incompetent, or do they believe in open borders?
I implore you, you got to fix this. Fix it or step down.
How many children have been in the Biden cages in calendar year 2021?
Does the Biden administration have any plans to issue million-dollar payments to the families of those who were killed or assaulted by illegal aliens?
Senator, in 2020, there were individuals who crossed illegally into the United States.
These are all on your watch.
Is it your position that the prior administration bears responsibility for that?
I'm asking the questions, and these are all on your watch.
Well, you saw her there. Marsha Blackburn, Republican senator from Tennessee, now in focus. You know, I watched you press in with those questions, like other senators in the room, too. You were focused in on a single point, and I understand it when you have said it before, that it would seem that the illegal immigrants are being treated better than Americans. Why do you say that?
I say that because what we are seeing, Harris, is this president, this administration is paying people who have illegally crossed the border. And whether they were separated from a child a short time or a longer time, and many of these cases were to confirm next of kin and to confirm they are the parent. But they're being paid $450,000 per individual. A family of four, that's $2 million. This is being done at a time when American citizens are struggling against the pressures of high inflation. They are struggling with unemployment and getting back to work and finding jobs in their community and having the skills to fill those jobs. So this shows you that this administration is determined to open that border, to let people come in, and what we have is a crisis and entry across that border that is unprecedented. The highest numbers of an October ever is what we saw.
Yeah, and you know, I want to get into this with you. What happens after 2022 in the midterm elections if Republicans can flip the House and take control even of the Senate? I mean, the numbers are so squeaky close. We never thought that Joe Biden had a mandate. Maybe he did, but the rest of the country knew he didn't by the way that they positioned and voted. So what's the first thing that you want to do, Senator Blackburn, to deal with what's going on at the border? Because you'll deal with it even though Biden isn't.
That's right. And because the border is wide open, every town's a border town and every state is a border state. And Harris, this is why moms are so upset about this border. The first thing you do is listen to the Border Patrol and give them what they need. That's what President Trump did. The Border Patrol has said for decades, we need a wall. We need better technology and surveillance. We need more agents and more judges to get this thing, to get this solved. And that's what President Trump gave them. But the Biden administration has stopped building the wall. They are, what I hear from Border Patrol agents, they're removing some of the surveillance and technology that helps them. And they are not funding more agents or more judges to help tend to these issues. And when you have 1.7 million apprehensions pushing toward 2 million, when you have hundreds of thousands of gotaways,
right,
and that this is just out of control.
So, Senator, real quickly before I let you go, I want to get to the gotaways. Based on Bill Malusian's reporting just a few minutes ago, the cartels are so well networked in this country that they can move the drugs that they bring in, those who get away from our authorities, can move it 48 to 72 hours into all of the rest of the United States. I mean, you got to have a tight network. They've got a supply chain, actually, that's working better than ours for our goods. And I'm not joking with that. That is frightening.
No, you're not. It is very frightening. And what I have heard from law enforcement and Border Patrol is that the cartels are now setting up basically distribution hubs on U.S. soil. And so you've got gangs and labor crews and sex trafficking, human trafficking, and drugs that are all very tightly networked. Now, when you talk with Border Patrol, they will tell you that the gotaways can be as few as a few 100,000 or as many as 1 million, 1.5 million, because they don't know what they are not getting. And think about that. We have a DHS that continues to say, oh, we've got 11 million illegal immigrants in the country. That's the same number they were using in 2005, in 2008, in 2012. You know.
Wow. Senator Blackburn from Tennessee, thank you for being in focus. We will follow the news as it takes us, and I know you'll be at the center of it on this issue.
Absolutely. Thank you.